Golly, folks. Okay, so we're back. Code Chronicles, back here with me. Got the cup of Joe. Hold on, let me turn down the headphones. The headphones are really loud. I've got an old audio interface. It's not working for whatever reason, so popped over to, or excuse me, out of the two. I used to be a musician. I got this nice Apollo Twin with the Shure SM7B. Just great setup for solid. That's all you need really for quality vocals. But the Apollo Twin, the software for it, for whatever reason, is having a bit of a trouble. So we popped over to the old Focusrite. Anyway, we're back to the Code Chronicles. I was messing around with some AWS, some API Gateway, some DynamoDBs, Lambda functions, and ultimately deploying just a simple web application. I don't know if we're going to end up doing that to our task manager. That might be an outcome. It may not be because we are using Mongo and Prisma. If we ultimately want to push everything to DynamoDB, we could absolutely do that, or to AWS. So let me get this all configured. Let me get me set up real quick with a little bit of music in the background. Boom. Okay. So I want to pop open our task manager. I'm going to get out of that AWS file. It was really interesting. I haven't really looked too far into the AWS ecosystem in the last month or two. That's largely what happened at work. Was everyone's building everything in AWS, of course, for enterprise systems. And recently, I've been able to hone back in and sharpen the building the code base skill, which I think is AWS is I feel like on the scope of a game, like a basketball game or something. I feel like AWS is like, you need to know the plays, the playbook, all these things, while like coding itself is like working on the 3-point shot, working on your handles, working on how you can dribble the ball. So they're both very important, but those things like Docker and Nginx and AWS and how you're structuring the architecture, that's like your playbook. That's like how's this player going to cut when this one does this thing, and you have to be the coach at that point. You need to be the orchestrator at the orchestra, the maestro. Is that what they're called? So so trying to do a little bit of that as well. But let's pop back into our project here, the task manager. It is looking fantastic. I love this completion component where it's 100%. You can at least visually see the graph. I might get rid of that green outline. Looks a little interesting, or maybe I'll just make this green. And the thing I wanted to work on today, I didn't do it behind the scenes. I started to mess with it, was the Kanban page with the collapsing thing. I wanted to shorten the names so they're not all, so they're not very long. And maybe we can have something like you can hover over the names and then it would show the whole thing or something, or pop up and show a little pop over. Maybe a good idea. But you see here how they're all now the same height and size roughly. Prior to that, if we kept the original size of the name of the task, it's going to look really big and bad. So doing that and not considering the UI UX can be a bit of an issue. In addition to that, I had some people comment more on making the code a little bit larger. So I hope this is large enough, and making the actual task manager smaller in comparison, so we can see both. Yeah, let's go ahead and do something like this. Boom. Okay. So I hope the code is large enough to see. Let's kind of break down some things. Let's look at our task manager and our to-do list. And well, obviously we've cleared out our task and transferred everything to Next on just a mono repo. So let's dive into the status of everything. I know the update status is not working. So that is going to be something we need to configure. But end of the day, I did want to kind of do that end-to-end thing where we containerize the application, have an Nginx server around, or a proxy, accessing our application and containerizing it with Docker. And just make sure we're kind of getting ready for that. And I need to go to the AWS space and redeploy this application proper. So I will probably do that with a different account and maybe walk you guys through that step. Could be potentially what I do. That way any ARNs, any environmental variables, any connections, API gateway URLs are all, deprecated. They're all going to be in an account that's going to get deleted, and et cetera, et cetera. Because I don't want those things out there, obviously. But today let's unwind. I'm going to turn down the headphones again just a little bit. Let's unwind and let's get into the task manager here, or at least just the front end part. I want these cards to look a lot prettier, just organized wise. So do you see how this one, when it's closed versus open, it doesn't look streamlined and clean. I want all the cards to look streamlined and clean and just one-liners basically when they're closed. And I do want to add one more functionality to the entire to-do list. So there's going to be 3 pieces of state where the cards are all open, the cards are all shrunk, and then also when the entire column is shrunk. And the reason for that is because when we're on mobile, I'm going to stack all 3. And it's going to look better, I think, to have that. It'll be a better experience on mobile if that's a doable thing. So let's dive into that and build for that. First things first, let's just clean up these cards. So I'm looking at the task cards component. Here's what I was roughly working on. If the task open, include the task name, return this function basically, or this thing, which is to splice the cards and do all this stuff, but it wasn't working for some reason. So, So let's go right here. This is task.task name. I'll show you guys what this is. This is just the entire name of everything. So it'll be this right here. And if we go .slice and we'll say 0 to, let's say 3, it'll only show 3 characters of all these things. So boom, 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 boom. It'll only show 3. Does that make sense? And we can add stuff like ... right? But we don't want ... on all of them. We only want the ones saying ... if it's longer than 3. So how do you do that? You say task.name .length. If it's greater than 3, we could do a little bit more. If it's greater than 4, how about that? Show the task.name spliced with the ... And if it's not, just show the task name. So you can see this function, or these 2 cards, they don't have, it's not longer than 4 characters. It's just 4 characters, A, or just A, or test, or test, or test. But this one right here, boom, David's new task. This one's longer than 4 characters. So now it shows that ... So I think if we do something like that, where we can hover over them or something, and a pop-up maybe happens, maybe that can happen. I think that, and maybe we make this clickable where it just shows the entire task, like more granular details, right? Because we kind of have this for editing the details. And maybe both ultimately will be the same, where we show the task name, the card. Let's see. So David's new task, boom, that's the actual task. And I don't know, let's think about it for a sec. I do know first thing is first, I want to make this class name white space no wrap. I don't want the ... wrapping on the bottom. I don't know if you guys saw some of these. Let's take that away. If you look at this card, how the cat, here's the task name, and then the ... that we're slicing here and adding to the ones longer than 4 characters, it's wrapping around. So we can say white space no wrap for that if you have Tailwind installed. And boom. So now they're all on the same card. Let's see, boom, they're all one-liners. That's perfect. That is perfect. Now we need to handle some sort of way to show the entire task name here. And I think there's, like I said, a few things. We can click on it and maybe boom, we have the whole task show. We can have a popover. So when we like hover on something and it like shows a pop-up window, kind of like this when you right click, that's kind of like a popover. Maybe I can show an example. Like boom, that's a popover. When you hover over something, it says open the home page. We could do something like that potentially, or we could do a mouse over. And a mouse over would be when we hover over this, it would show the whole name. So there's a few different approaches that we could do, and maybe we'll try out a few. Let's think about it. Let's think about what would be the most sensible. I feel like the mouse over would be the most sensible if we just hovered over the card and it just showed the full name. I feel like that would be just a simple, proper thing where you could see the full task and not hover over the task name, but hover over the actual card. So let's maybe think about how to do that. So background primary, let me just double check that this is the card. I'm going to do that by saying background red 500 or 400 just to see, okay, we are talking about the card here. And I will say on mouse, I believe it's mouse enter, we're going to do something. We're going to show a function, and then we're also going to have on mouse leave, we'll do another function. So let's think about it. We're gonna arrow function into a certain task with a certain task ID. So it'll say handle popover, or I'll say handle hover over card. And in this function, I'm gonna pass the task ID. So with this handle hover over card function, it's throwing an error because we haven't built it yet. With this function though, we should be able to identify which card we're hovering over. And let's go ahead and build that then. So let me close all these other things just to kind of clean our thing up a little. So we actually are working in task cards, so I'll keep that open. Functions here is where I'm building all the functions roughly. So we'll say function handle hover over card. It's going to receive task ID, which is a string, and let's just console log it. Now, I believe if we hover over a task, it should fire this function off. Let's see. Boom. So that's how we know we're hovering over the task with this ID. And if we hover over another, boom, it should fire off that same function, but with a different task ID, which it's doing. So if we go through all of them, boom, 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 we're going to see all these different IDs, which are all of our different tasks, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want the function to do. Now what we need to do is build a piece of state to adjust, to say, okay, is this the card being hovered over? Awesome. Let's account for it. So let's say task being hovered, set task being hovered. Use state string, boom, and it'll be nothing, but it's going to be a task ID ultimately. And what we want to do is just set that task being hovered right here. And we're going to use this as a state, right? Let me show you guys. I'll put it at the top of the file here. We should see task being hovered. It's going to be right here on the DOM. Let's see, we'll see it pop up here. Oh, at the top of the columns up here. So right here, we should see the IDs being hovered. So if I hover over here, boom, it's that card being hovered. Boom, it's that card with that ID being hovered. Boom, 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 boom. So it should work in all of our columns. And now that we have a piece of state that we can use in our template to adjust everything, what we want to do is say, if this ID is being hovered, show the full name. That's all. That's all we want to do. So what we could do, let's get rid of our white space for a sec. We could build a task being hovered equals the task.task ID. So that's saying, is this task being hovered? Is the task currently being hovered? Is it this ID? So if you look, how about I do this? I'll say true and false. And all these cards should say false right now. Every single one of them. If you see all their headers now, it says true, true, false, true. Really, none of them should say true on initial load. So they all say false. And then if we hover over them, it should change the state to true. Let's see. Boom, true. That one's being hovered. Boom. Now that one's being hovered. Boom. Now that one's being hovered. So on and so forth. So any card we hover over, it should flip the state. Or we can now use this Boolean logic right here to do something with. And what we're going to do instead of true, false, we're just going to say task.taskName. And over here, if it's not being hovered, we're just going to say taskName.slice 0 through 4. Let's just see what that does initially. So basically, we should see the ... thing. And then if we hover over, boom, new cat, boom. See the full task, right? Update Prisma. Nice. This is working great, guys. So let's optimize for this now. This is the exact logic we want. And then we're also going to need to do on mouse leave. Make sure that task is empty, because if you notice when we hover, but if I leave the card, that task is still hovered over. So in the way we built the base columns, they each kind of have their own independent state. So if I hover over this one, it's also going to show a thing. If I hover over here, there's also a task being shown. So we need to account for that. And we can actually do that really quick too and say on mouse leave. We'll say handle remove hover over card. And of course that function's not built, so we're going to get an error. But let's just scroll up here where we have updates. Oh, not here, but right here, handle hover over card. I'm just going to copy it down, paste in our new function name. And what we want to do is set the task ID to null, to nothing. Actually, we really don't even need the task ID. I'm pretty sure this will work. So if we just hover over, boom, hover over, boom, hover over, boom. It just removes the task being hovered over. That's all it does. It just clears it out. And I guess technically we probably could do it in handle hover over card. But this seems like a really robust, like guaranteed way to work, where something we don't have to think about. We just know. And let me remove that ID on top that we know which one's being hovered, because that was messing with the column height. And we should see this work. So boom, new cat, new cat, new cat, boom. Let's go through all of these. See that, guys? It's working fantastic. So that's exactly what we want to do. Let's see this. We could still do it here. We could still do it here. So let's get back to optimizing for that. And let's think about how we want to do it. So task length, we want all of this logic here. If the task length is greater than 4, show this. Otherwise, we'll show the task name. So I'm going to steal that and pop it in here. And this is kind of double ternary logic. So what it's first saying is this task being hovered? Yes or no? If it is, show the entire task name. If it is not being hovered over, do this next ternary statement. And originally what we first had was just show the sliced amount. Just show task.taskName slice. Let me delete all this real quick. What it was saying here, let's give us some space so we can kind of identify, is show the taskName.taskSlice, which was working. But what we want to do, we don't always want to show the slice. Because if you now look at our AAA and all these other things, the cards are being shown with ... All of them are, unless they're being hovered over. And we don't want that. We actually want this. If the task name's length is greater than 4, show that ... Else, just show the task name. So this one, it doesn't matter if we hover over it or not. It shouldn't change state. It's not longer than 4 characters, so we don't need to care about it. But like this Prisma one over here, update Prisma, it's way longer than 4 characters, so we need to do something with it. And I think that's going to be a good UI UX approach for this. Let's excuse me. Let's still wrap this with with our class name, white space, no wrap. We don't want those cards ever wrapping. And the next thing we want to deal with is going to be that badge, right? Because now we have kind of an issue here, I suppose. Because I almost do want it to wrap when it's not being hovered over. So we could pull this out and ultimately use this as logic to show one piece of template or the next piece of template. So let me show you guys what I mean by that. Let me get this piece of logic out there because it's going to confuse my brain real quick. Let's go back to just task.taskName slice. And sometimes I need to do that when it's getting a little too convoluted. Just break it back down to its tiny pieces, right? So let's make a div here, and we will use this to conditionally render this div. And in this div, we're going to show the task name. And I'm going to use this statement around this div. So let's try this out for size. We actually don't need the ternary, we just need the and. And let me show you what this will do now. So if the task is now being hovered, we're using the state to just show the task name. Boom, just show the task name, show the task name, show the task name. And what we can kind of actually do with this is a similar thing. We could say, well, when the task isn't being hovered, so right here, we can just change it to not being hovered, do something else. And we can use our alternative state. And originally that alternative state was just going to be the slice task name. So far we're doing the same exact thing that we originally have right here. Same thing. But now we can control the template because now we have a div involved. So boom. Now we get this beautiful still thing where we can say white space no wrap when we add the ... Or we can handle the div however we want to. So I'm going to do that. Let's say task.taskName. Let's steal this bit of logic, that smart logic that we needed, if I can call it such, where it's going to show the ... or should show the ... Oh, excuse me, I'm in the wrong spot. It's actually going to go here. So it should show the ... but we don't want it to wrap. So in this div, I'll say class name white space no wrap, and that should solve our issue. But now when we hover over it, it should show the full name, and it's not going to be wrapped, or it's not going to be under the conditions of no wrap, where that really long line was going off the screen, where we maybe need to do a side scroll. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. We want something precisely like this. The last thing we need to handle is now going to be the base badge. We don't want the badge to go down. At the bottom, we want the badge to either be by the arrow or still stay at the top next to the thing. Or we can honestly hide the badge if the task is being hovered. That is something we can do as well. So I could steal this bit of logic and say task being hovered. When the task is not being hovered, show this badge. If the task is being hovered, don't show the badge. So now we can see the whole task. I kind of like it. I kind of like it, to be honest. Update Prisma, boom, okay. So I think that's a decent workaround for our solution here, or for our tasks, and certainly our task cards. So I like it, folks. I think it's a decent workaround for the time being. Let's go ahead and push those changes. Oh, I still have the split error. So we're gonna have to do. Unfortunately, we can at least still run a type check is important. Let's try that out. Make sure we're pushing clean code, at least from a data standpoint, is important. No type errors, which is amazing. And we can git add, git commit, custom task types. This is actually going to be task card UI UX. And it looks like we have a CAN 7E8. If you see that at the bottom right, looks like that would be an appropriate card to push this with. And let's push. So I like it. I think that's a smooth enough experience. And maybe we should make it click instead of it being the chevron that controls whether the task is open or not. Perhaps we can actually make the click be on the card as well. So if someone clicks the div, it should shut the card, right? I don't know. Oh, we need to rerun dev, I think. So we just pushed, and maybe I need to refresh the DOM. I feel like this should work right out of the box, right? Where we can click on the card and it should collapse it or open it, or it should pop open a modal. I feel like clicking on the card should do a larger action that seems to be congruent with a lot of user experiences in today's world. If I click on a card, something should happen, whether it pops up with an edit modal, whether it pops open with our UI UX to close and open the cards, something, right? So just like that, I just want to be able to click it and I see that animation happen. But you can see we actually lost functionality of our edit modal. And it's not that we lost the functionality, it's just when we click on the card, the click is going all the way through the DOM. So it starts at the top and it'll go all the way through and it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. So what we need to do is when we open the base modal, we have a button for the base modal here. I believe we're going to need to do event, let's see. For these, I believe handle open modal, we're going to need to do ease stop propagation, I believe. So let's try that out. Let's see if that works. Where if we click on this part, it shouldn't go farther back. It should just open the modal. But if we click on the part right next to it, it should do our UI UX. So I see it's doing both. It's opening the modal and shutting the task. We don't want that. So let me think about it. Because that's our open modal function, I believe. Yes. So I don't understand, because when I was clicking it there, it was working great. It wasn't propagating. See, I'm clicking. You guys might hear that really harsh click now. But when I open the modal, for some reason, it's closing that task as well. When I click off, it's now closed. I think that's really interesting. So I wonder why that is. I really do. Custom function. Void is not assignable to type void. Base button. Okay. Let's pop over to the base button and see what is going on. Void, or I guess it could do a React event, right? So we need this type right here, React.mouse event. Believe that should work. Okay. Let's see if that at least cancels this out for a second. No. Okay. Maybe we needed to do that. Just arrow into these. I'll give it a go right here as well. Looks like this is different. The ellipse icon specifically is different from the others. So that is interesting. And let's go ahead and try to delete a task, make sure all this functionality is working. So update it, didn't mean to press that. Delete. Let's see. We have an issue here. So Let me think about this state one more time a little differently. Make sure there's not an opportunity here. So that still works. That still deletes the task. However, it looks like when we press the, or do an arrow function, excuse me, it looks like that is doing something with our functionality. So let's think about it. Update task. Oh, this was the update task thing anyways. So very, very interesting. I don't think it was even there. Or was this our ellipse icon? Okay, it was. Okay, got it. Sorry guys for a sec. I didn't realize that was, now why would it do that? I still don't understand. We're stopping the propagation when it's being opened. So it shouldn't affect that button. That button shouldn't know it's being clicked. So when it does that, I'm actually going to go back to the base column. And when a task is being added to, where is it, the task open array, I want to fire off a function just to see what tasks are being opened. So let's see, handle toggle all tasks. That's for, we actually need to hoist that upwards. Or right now it's being hoisted, but we do need to move that upwards in our template. Let's think about this. So handle set task open. That's what we want. Okay, so let's go ahead and console log and just see if this is, I imagine it is being clicked when the modal is being pressed. So let's see, boom. When I click off, when we click off, there's a fired off function. So that is where it's happening in the action of things. Oh, and you know why that is? I believe it's because the background is being clicked, which is going to be this guy, handle close modal actually, not the open modal. So, or both the open and close modal. So this right here, this background is still connected to that button in the DOM. So that is really interesting, I think. I think that's the bug here. Let's hope this is our solution. And we'll give it a go, give it a refresh, and we need to look at the custom function in a moment here, but let's just one thing at a time. That was beautiful. That was beautiful, folks. So let's now slow down for a second and think about why we're getting some of these errors. Assignable type void, the expected type comes from property custom function, which is declared here on type intrinsic attributes and I button. So handle modal open, is this not a void function? Because I believe it is a void function. It returns a void thing. It's not returning like the number one, it's not returning true, it's not returning a string value. So when in TypeScript, right? If we want to define what our function returns, we would say something like this. It'll return a string, right? So you know what the function's returning. And if I hover over it, it should say string, right? In this thing. And we actually don't even have to declare it. It'll actually still let us know here. It's returning a string. That's what it says when it's doing this semicolon, or excuse me, this colon and string. If we want it to return a string, we can declare it. And then let's say down the road we say return false. It's going to throw an error because it'll say, wait, our function is not allowed to return a Boolean. So even if we hover over it, it says, no, our function returns a string, so why are you returning a Boolean? So the easy way around it is to say Boolean, right? And boom, now you can return a Boolean or whatever you need to declare your data as, right? Even if it's a specific thing, you can return hello, an enum of things, hello world. So I can only return those strings. I can't return strewings. It'll be an error. I can return hello though. So this is how you can kind of organize your functions as well if you need it to be specific. And the error it's saying here is it's expecting this mouse event to return, or it's not assignable to type void. So we actually don't need to return any of that. That was just a talking point. And I'm unfamiliar with what it's kind of asking. So type E mouse event of an element void is not assignable to empty function void. So I think the workaround is saying we can do an empty function into void, or in addition to that, we can also do this e.boom into void. I thought that really would have worked. I really thought it would have. Function notation must be parenthesized when used in a union type. Okay, so let's get rid of this and let's just see if, boom, we can do that. If we remove this, will that remove our error? What about we include this and remove this just to see? Boom, that is going to be our error. So let's make a union out of these two. And how do we do that? Let's say TypeScript union. The handbook of TypeScript. Here we go, folks. TypeScript union types. This is exactly what we want. We want an or. And that's what I thought it was. I thought it was just a pipe. So maybe I can make it a type, and that'll be a thing. So we could say type function type, and we'll say that or that. But it's really not liking that. Function type notation must be, okay, so that is what it needs to be. And again, we tested that by just deleting this previous void, and it gets rid of that error. Oh, or maintains it here. I remember it getting rid of it for a second when we did it here. So let's throw this to our trusty old intern. Can you fix the errors of this type union, of this union type, excuse me. Oh, okay, so it says it needs to be just parentheses around it. And React.mouse event is what it needs to be, not just mouse event. So boom, I think that might have fixed it. Let's go back to our file. We still see an error here. Mouse event, so maybe we can, it is a React.mouse event, so interesting. And if we go into it again like this, it seems to have worked. But then we lose functionality of our modal. So oh, that's all I needed. Just parentheses on the void side as well. So, okay, looks like that fixed our errors, and we are back up and running. Let's push everything. Git add, git commit, and we'll say task card types. We don't really have a task for that, but that's okay. That's just kind of a low-level bug fix. So now we have this new functionality. We can click on cards. We can open up our modal, and it still maintains all the state properly as it should. Let's close this task cards. Looks like we got that handled. I'm going to keep the use effect down here. And the thing I'm going to bring up, I don't want it hoisted anymore. We just had it down there in the previous episode so we can work on that function. I do like lifecycle down here. I do like any of my initializations down there and just right above the lifecycle or right around it. I want this function to be right next to this one because they're handling state associated with the card size. So handle set task open, handle toggle all tasks. Maybe we'll even rename that to be a little bit more congruent with this one. So handle set all tasks open or something. as long as we just know that that's kind of our function here for that. So seems to be very good. And maybe we could say toggle task open, handle toggle tasks open, handle toggle all task open, I guess technically would be better naming. Instead of set, handle toggle tasks open. And technically, it would technically speaking, it would just be one task, right? We could say handle toggle tasks open, but I don't like to just do one S things. I'll say all tasks open. It's very important to be precise with programming, right? Because fast forward when we're working on this 2-3 weeks from now, there's likely going to be a time where we look back and say, what does this do again? What does that thing do? Like, I love to be a verbose engineer. So even handle toggle task open, I could say handle toggle one task open, or handle toggle one task open. Yep. Like I can, because now I can identify, okay, this is our function that handles this. This is our function that handles this for toggling all tasks, and so on and so forth, right? So I don't have a problem being verbose. I really don't. I don't mind it. The next thing I want to add, let's talk about it. I want this function. I really don't like how to adjust the height of things, to be honest. But we'll think about that in a moment. Maybe I can add a little transition to it or something so it's not as jarring, right? Where's our task card? Task card, I believe right here. Maybe we could say transition. We do have transition, so let me say all. And maybe that's not where the transition needs to be. Maybe the transition needs to be here as well. Translate. I guess it's really just showing the state. It's not really, it's kind of there, or there's nothing for it to transition from. It's just either there on the DOM or not, really is kind of how that's working. So what we can do, and this is just getting a little bit picky, right? But it's important to be picky. It's important to do that. And what we could do is show the state here as a CSS trigger. So let's maybe consider for that, where we can wrap this in a CSS trigger and say transition for this, and we could say transition for this as well. And technically it should always be here on the DOM. It should always be mounted with things, but we can just show an invisible version versus a visible version. So if it's being hovered over, just show the visible one. And if it's not, show the invisible one, right? So hold on, where's our error? What did we mess up here? Task open, expected a semicolon. So it's always going to show both those states. And now we can just do transition. We can say opacity 0, right? Or even invisible versus visible. And I think that'll have the impression that we're showing something, right? So do you see how it kind of fades a little? Fades a little in, fades a little out? That might be one of our approaches, right? Where we can kind of have it be a little bit smoother than what it is. But you know what? Let's go backwards and make sure we didn't miss something easy up top here. Task ID. Okay, boom. Index of task ID. We did delete something. Okay. So that would be one approach to it, but I'm not overly concerned. I guess it's not a huge problem. It's doing what it needs to do. So let's think about it in another fashion, right? Or think about what we need to think about. Just, yeah, I think there's an opportunity for improvement there. Let's remove the task cards and finally add the last piece of state, which is going to be, we're going to have 3 pieces of state, right? So it can't just be a Boolean set open, set close here. We also need set open, set close, and is column collapsed. And I think we can use that, right? I think we can use that to visually show the task or not. Let's see, const tasks column collapsed, right? And set task column collapsed, it's going to be a Boolean value. We'll start with false. Or better yet, these will actually be strings. We can have a string, an array of these. Or we don't need an array of them actually, because each column has its own state. But we need to be able to push this. So I guess, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a string or a Boolean rather. Forgive me, guys. We could do both cases. Wouldn't matter. Got ahead of myself there. But basically what we want to do is be able to click on this. The arrow can go sideways to collapse the task. And then we want the arrow then to go up and collapse the entire column. So we're just looking at to do. And I even wanted to add just one quick thing as well. Just filter task.length next to the column's heading. So let's just build for that real quick. Filter task.length just to show, boom, we can see 2 tasks according to this column. And let's do it in a classier way, if you will. So I'm going to wrap this div. And we're going to flex it. Item center. Oop. Item center. We'll have a little gap X just between the 2. And we don't want that to be a huge thing. We just want it to be a subtle piece of data. So we'll say opacity 50. And we can even wrap it in parentheses or something like that, where we could see the number of tasks being done or the number of tasks here. And I don't know why it's not centering. Because I want it at the same height, not at the end. It looks like it's kind of going to the end of the thing. So maybe I could pop this actually into the H2 and it'll still work. Looks like it will. Let me just go ahead and delete the wrapper div then. Let's not do it that way. Let's just do it this way. Or we say flex here, boom. That should get us roughly what we want to do. Gap X2, perfect. And I just want to maybe make the text a little bit smaller. And maybe I'll try this here. Flex, we'll try item center. See if that can center us out. Perfect, perfect, okay. So that way we can collapse all the tasks. All the tasks will disappear and we can see still how many tasks are in that column. So it's going to be a way to kind of have nested tasks with different state, right? That way when we're on a mobile view, or if all the columns are stacked up on each other, they're not this like infinitely long or this really long thing. You can kind of collapse them and see how they all look side by side. So let's go ahead and think about that real quick. So we want to show the task cards if the task column isn't open. But how can we adjust that state? What should we be able to click? I think this chevron needs to have 3 different states. So let's think about how to do that. That chevron, where does that exist again? This button right here, task open, it does this. And on click, handle toggle all task open. So we actually needed to do 2 concerns within one function. And that makes me wonder how we can do this. Okay, so at least in a clean way. I know we can definitely do it. Function handle toggle column. Let's try that. I've got 20% battery, so we'll be wrapping it up here shortly. handle toggle column. It's going to receive the column, can be the string, that's fine. Say column header even, so we know which one it is. And let's think about this. Task column collapse. Let's make it a string, so we can specifically say this column. And we will just set the task column collapse to this column header. Boom. So now we need to know when to use this function. This function, all it's doing is simply saying, if I click on the to-do state, or excuse me, this column, I need to see the to-do column. That's it. That's it. If I click on the in progress column, I need to see the in progress column. So I feel like there's an opportunity to use this function, the handle toggle task function, to pass in the column header and go from there. So let's try for that. It's throwing an error because we don't have the column header. So let's build column header, string, boom. And we have a div issue. What is our issue? Unexpected div. What happened? What happened? What did we break? Hit Command Z. Okay, column header. And let's go back to this column header. Oh, I see. I was writing in two places at once because I hit Command D. That's what I do sometimes to easily go to the function name this. If you hit Command D, it'll highlight the next thing that's labeled that. So I can click this, but what it's doing, it'll edit both at the same time. So if I don't click off of it, whatever I label them, it'll edit both things at the same time. So that's what I was doing here. Let me zoom back in, get us proper. I'll say console.log. Let's see if we're getting this header here. We should be able to get it. Every time we click this, we should see to do. Perfect. We see in progress. Okay, so we're going to use this now. We're going to break off into this function from here. I don't want to stack this much logic in one function, so we're just going to pass this here. It's hopefully solid programming principles where every function has its own kind of logic and set of rules for it. So this functionality needs to be independent of this function, right? We're just tacking it on. It's an extension of the functionality of this thing. So we're not messing with this functionality at all. We don't want to touch that. We want to extend upon it. We want to embellish upon it. So let's set the task column collapsed, and we've done so. But the problem actually now that I realize is we may actually have to rework the logic, because maybe not though. Perhaps not. Perhaps not. Perhaps we will just need a guard clause and a few other things. But let me just think for a sec. Because if we set this column header I think I've got it. Okay, so we need to actually set task column state. This I think is going to make more sense. So we'll set task column state, and it can be 3 values. Tasks open, tasks closed, or column collapsed. And we'll always default it to task open. And I think this is how we can use this piece of state to make sure we're not adjusting anything else. But we want to set this, let's see. Sorry guys, I'm thinking how to do this in a proper way without dirtying up all the task open logic that we have. I don't want to rework that. I want that array to still work as it is. But the problem is that array works on a Boolean standard. You can click it to enter task. You can click it one more time to remove task. So it's a Boolean thing. And I'm trying to think, how do we now insert a third value in that? So it's not a true false. It's not a click once, click out, right? It now needs to be a click once, click in, click again. There's a mid step, and then click third time. Now you can click out. So doing that while maintaining this functionality, I think there needs to be some sort of return statement or guard clause. Let's think. So ultimately, we want to set this column state to either open, closed, or completely collapsed. How about we just do if column state, if task column state equals task open. What if we just set it to the next thing? Task close, keep it really simple, right? Else if tasks closed, set column state to collapsed, right? Or what was it? Column collapsed. Else set tasks column state to task open. So I don't think we actually even need the header anymore. I don't think we need that from our functionality, right? We may just need to do something else here, right? Because I think that piece of state is going to work now. And let's visually try. Let's see. Set task. Okay, so we just need. Sorry guys, I'm going to zoom out one. It's a little too zoomed in for me. Task column state. So I'm just going to use this to affect the entire column, right? And all we really need to do is just remove, I believe, this section right here. So we're just going to say, okay, either show or don't show. And this is pretty much exactly what we want to do. And maybe we can even remove the button. So it's just this like clean, you can click it open, boom, it expands. And you have all this new functionality here. So let's wrap this in an object, all this stuff. And we'll say task column state equals task open or task column state equals task closed. And it can be one of those. Most importantly, it just shouldn't be the third one. So it shouldn't be column completely collapsed, right? That's the only one it doesn't need to be. So let's get that state down here. What was it? Collapsed, column collapsed. And I think that should work. I don't know why we're getting an error here. Oh, we need to wrap this in fragments. Just needs a total thing to wrap around. So perfect. And let's now just build a button to adjust column state. And let's see, adjust column state, and on click, we're just going to fire off our column function here. So this should change the state once. Now, boom, collapses the column. Perfect. And if we click it again, should be doing something else. So we need that functionality basically on our chevron icon. Now, I don't know how to do that part. I haven't thought that one through. And I noticed this also goes to justify down at the bottom of the screen, right? So we want to do something about that as well. We don't want the height of the page, and I don't know if that's coming from here or this screen, right? We don't want that here. We want it to stay at the top of the screen, right? So I think it's gonna be here, justify center. We want to say justify start. Let's collapse the column. Nope. Might be item center. Item start. Boom. That's what we want. So we're gonna have 3 states. I clicked it. Boom. Now the whole column collapses. Boom. And I think the way to do it. Let's consider. We need this functionality. And then that, right? It's kind of working already. I don't know how this is phenomenally working, but it is. But it's not totally working. It's working in an indirect way where the chevron's going Boolean, and then the adjust column state's still going through 3 cycles. So if you notice the state of it, it's open this time, but if we go again, it's closed when the column comes back. But that's fundamentally what we want to do is adjust the state where we can close them all, and then we can also close the column, and then boom, we can actually bring them all back. But we need them opened here. We don't want them closed. We want it consistent. We want it properly built out. So let's build for that. Even though it's partially working, we want it to be properly working. So we have some baseline functionality of this working, which is great. But let's think how to do this. I think what we want to do is adjust task open state where task open can only, oh, that's precisely why it was working. Okay, because we had it here. Let's say if task column state does not equal the same thing, column collapsed, do all this. So in other words, we say if the state equals columns collapsed, return. And I think that's what we need. So it's starting on the closed, and we just want to flip it, but it is acting consistent. Let's refresh. Let's try one more time. Folks, that is precisely what we want. So let's remove this adjust column state button. This now needs to be part of handle toggle column. It needs to be part of that, which I believe it is. And then finally, the only thing we need to adjust is the chevron. It's amazing. Just wanted to test it, make sure it's really working. And I almost want it to be, if you click on the column, it kind of does this, right? Not just the chevron. Like if I click on here, it should kind of do that. I believe so. I like it. And again, folks, this is because if we go to the Kanban page and let's do this, they're right now flexed, but let's say on a small screen, they're not going to be flexed. They're going to be flex call, and they're going to be up and down of each other. So you can see on a smaller screen, right? If this was a phone, let's go ahead and pop it to a phone. Obviously, we have some CSS issues here, but we want them on top of each other, so I can easily navigate my task and see this. And what we can do here is just make a gap 6, so it'll always gap them apart, or should. There should be a gap Y. Let's see, gap Y4 between all of our columns. There should be margin between them and stuff. Not sure why we're. Oh, there. Okay, we still need to have flex. And I guess technically on here we can have flex row. So they should just be. We can just leave gap 6 to have less CSS code is fine. So that way, when we're on smaller dimensions, we're here. And at some point, should go to our side-by-side look. Boom. And we might want to adjust that down the road. We'll think about that. We might do flex wrap or something. We might do a grid thing where it kind of does something like this, and then boom, right? So there's a lot of ways we can approach this. But fundamentally, we need to be able to navigate this in a healthy way with a smaller screen, right? That's the fundamental thing. So let's get out of this mode. That's why we built this. But not opposed to the flex wrap right now. I don't think that's a terrible thing, a terrible workaround. But let's precisely think about that one day, right? And let's configure this column state and the chevron issue. That's what we want to do right now. So we have our button here, class name task boom. Okay, and we actually want to fire this on click function here. Oh. So let's try that out. Let's see how that works. If I click on right here, boom. It's exactly what we want, folks. We'll make this cursor pointer just so people know you can click on it. It's perfect. Perfect. You can even go as far as saying active scale 90 transition, something like this. Boom. Let's not do that actually. But what we can maybe do is background primary or something like this, where you click on it, shows a little click, right? Not really a huge deal, but the important part is we got the UI UX involved here. That's the important part. So we clean that up. I do vaguely forget on what we wanted to add in addition to this for the rest of the day, but I think that's a great, I'll say task card UI UX, and let's associate it to can 7E8. And we need to get a uniform way of doing this. So I think we want to do this first, 7E8, so we can see which thing we are, and then maybe the title of it right after, or something like this. So we can see the ticket issue, and then also the rough description of what the ticket is about. So I like it, folks. I like it. I think that's a great UI UX altogether. I really do. I think we're getting there. Guys, I appreciate it. I'm going to wrap the episode up here. I think amazing experience there, and a lot of just amazing subtle fixes. It's the details that are important. So, but we're working on it. We're getting there, and I like how it's all coming together. It's all playing nice now. It's all starting to feel like a proper application. Still some small bugs that we need to handle. One of them being here's one, right? I shouldn't be able to click on the task, and it shouldn't collapse, should not propagate there. So I believe we did e.react, was it mouse event? And we did e.stop propagation. So let's see if that works. So if I click on here, it shouldn't be doing that. Let's think about that. Another way to handle this is, instead of having this on a wrapper div on the entire column, we could just have it on the heading. So just this heading area, you can do that. But down here, you shouldn't be able to. That would be a perfectly acceptable way to handle that as well. So it should just be just the heading, just from here to here, roughly, the to-do, which I can enjoy that. So I don't know why it's still working, though. It shouldn't be working. But next episode, let's go ahead and build for that status bug on the back end, where perfect, that's no longer working, but it works when you click any part of the header, which is what you want, right? Because when you think about it, when you build, let's see, if I do this background, any of these parts here, we can click on, and it'll do the thing we want to do. But down here, it won't. That's perfect. But that's what you want for kind of UI UXs is is these larger click boxes, these larger, like on a modal, it's very common. Let's get rid of that propagation event. But on a modal, it's very common to have like the click off here. And especially in today's web development space, if you don't have those things, it's kind of frustrating. It's like, oh, why is clicking on this tiny thing not working when traditional experience is very, very friendly to the user now. So let's use this piece of state, I guess, to last adjust the chevron, and then we will wrap it up. So that's going to be this statement here. So if how about this? If tasks closed, I believe, is the state, we want the chevron to be rotated. We'll say 270 degrees, right? Boom, to the right, and then it goes all the way around. Task open, filter length. So I guess we don't have to do the filter length anymore. We can actually deprecate all of this, and we can just utilize the column state as a whole. So if tasks are closed, if tasks are open, we could say do this other thing, rotate, or don't rotate at all, just transition. And we'll say transition. And I actually don't want it 90 degrees. I want it on the left side, not the right side. And then else rotate, we could say 180 degrees. I think that'll work. I think that works, folks. So click on it. Yep, that works. Okay, let's actually go back to the 270 here, not the 90. So it'll go down, sideways, up, down, sideways, up, down, sideways, up, down, sideways, up. Perfect. Devil's in the details, folks. Well, I appreciate you guys watching very much. We have a very, very, very proper UI UX now. I feel confident in this. And yeah, this Kanban page is coming together. It's become this wholesome experience and product that I'm very proud of. That I can properly say, hey guys, this is something I can stand by and look at and appreciate. So thank you for being a part of it. Again, if you want to take a software engineering course with me, I have my Teachable course in the description. Please sign up for that. It's $2 a day, and that's where I'm starting the course price. Ultimately, I do want to work really hard on that and make that course a usable thing to embellish people's skill set. No different than hopefully the Code Chronicles series as a whole. I hope people have learned a thing or two, and I've certainly learned some stuff from you guys. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward for the next one. Cheers.